AEDT 1170U, Psychological Foundations and Digital Technology, Module 3, Video Clip 3.1, An Introduction to Motivational Theory. This video will provide an introduction to a few well-known theories of motivation and apply them to the adult digital learning environment. We will begin to reflect on the role of technology in traditional theories of motivation. As you watch this clip, challenge yourself to see how the different theories are playing out in your work life, personal life, or studies. Let's see what a few well-known people have to say about staying motivated. Steve Jobs talks about passion for what you do. There's a classic Rocky clip for those movie fans, and a clip by Will Smith on motivation and staying passionate in life.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it and you don't really love it, you're going to give up. And that's what happens to most people, actually. If you really look at the ones that ended up being successful, unquote, in the eyes of society and the ones that didn't, oftentimes it's the ones that are successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. And the ones that didn't love it quit because they're sane, right? Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it? So it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of worrying constantly. And if you don't love it, you're going to fail. So you got to love it. You got to have passion.
You ain't gonna believe this, but you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always going to love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son, you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't going to have a life.
Hey. Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me. All right?
All right.
You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.
Here are some guiding questions for this video. How does biology determine our motivational needs? What does optimum arousal theory imply about learning? Describe Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What are the primary differences in intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation? And what are some characteristics of good feedback, and how is it linked to motivation? Instinct and evolutionary theory of motivation states that an instinct qualifies as a complex behavior if it has a fixed pattern throughout a species and is unlearned. Examples of this would be the return of salmon to their birthplace or imprinting in birds flying south. When the original theory of instinct collapsed, the drive reduction theory developed. This theory postulates that a physiological need creates an aroused state that drives the organism to reduce that need, such as eating, drinking, or sleep. The physical aim of drive reduction is to maintain homeostasis, or the maintenance of a steady internal physical state. An example of this would be body temperature regulation or body weight regulation. However, we are much more than our homeostatic biology. So the optimum arousal theory developed. Some motivated behaviors increase arousal. For example, well-fed animals will then take risks to explore after their homeostatic needs are met, and curiosity drives them to investigate. So despite having our biological needs satisfied, we as humans are driven to experience curiosity and stimulation. This brings us to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow was a humanistic psychologist who described these priorities as a hierarchy, since some needs take priority over others. The pyramid has at its base physical needs, such as food and water, then safety, then love, esteem and belonging, and finally self-actualization, which involves creativity, problem-solving, spontaneity, and morality. As human beings, we go beyond biology. We have a need to belong. And this need to belong is socially adaptive because it has aided our survival. The need to belong is emotional and thought-provoking. Our need for social acceptance is high, and when we feel accepted, our self-esteem increases. People who feel socially supported live with better health and better immune system responses. So, do online communities fill this need in humans? Let's move on to achievement motivation. This is a desire for significant accomplishment, for mastery of things, people, or ideas, or for attaining a high standard. People with low achievement motivation choose tasks where failure is unlikely or not embarrassing, and people with high achievement motivation prefer moderately difficult tasks where success is attainable but is attributable to their skill and effort. Why, despite having similar potential, does one person become more motivated to achieve than another? Highly motivated children often have parents and teachers who encourage their independence from an early age and praise and reward them for their successes. High achievement motivation has emotional roots. Children associate achievement with positive emotions and learn to attribute these achievements to their own competence and effort. Let's take a look at intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is driven by an interest or enjoyment in the task itself, and it exists within the individual rather than relying on any external pressure. It is based on taking pleasure in an activity rather than working towards an external reward. Of the list below, do a self-assessment of the intrinsic motivators that are applicable to your life or work, and notice how some of these might change depending on the situation that you're in. Are there any that we missed that you would add to this list? Self-determination theory also focuses on the importance of intrinsic motivation in driving human behavior. Like Maslow's hierarchical theory and others that build on it, self-determination posits a natural tendency toward growth and development. Extrinsic motivation refers to the performance of an activity in order to attain a reward or an outcome, and it often contradicts intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation comes from outside the individual, and common extrinsic motivators are rewards such as money or grades, coercion, or avoiding punishment. Competition tends to be generally extrinsic because it encourages the performer to win and beat others, not merely to enjoy the intrinsic rewards of the activity. An incentive theory would state that this reward, whether it's tangible or intangible, is presented after the occurrence of a behavior with the intent to cause the behavior to occur again. It's done by associating positive meaning to the behavior, so that if the person or dog receives the reward immediately, the effect is greater and decreases as the duration lengthens. Here are some points to ponder. How has the digital environment affected our innate need to belong to a community? Given what you know about online communities, has technology made us more isolated or more connected? Does learning in a digital environment happen better with intrinsic or extrinsic motivators? Do the makers of video games rely on intrinsic or extrinsic motivators to encourage players to continue? Let's take a look at the role of feedback and motivation, and some characteristics of good feedback. In your work or learning environment, here are some suggestions to link good feedback to motivation for improvement when working with your colleagues. Good feedback should be timely and frequent. It should focus on observations, not inferences about the person. It should focus on quantity and not judge that person's motivation. It should share information and ideas instead of giving advice. And it should design the task so that the person can assess their own work. Consider the amount of feedback as well, since more feedback is not always better. Remember that the impact of feedback decreases as time goes by, and it loses its context the more you delay in giving it. Learners need to know the context, so it's best to give it here and now. People should have the opportunity to practice with feedback, as any athlete with a coach knows. Giving people the opportunity to try again with feedback before evaluating their performance is important. Inferences happen when we draw conclusions about a person too quickly. In other words, we don't want to draw conclusions like, he's dumb, or she's shy, or they're all lazy. In an online environment, we run the risk of assuming things about people that may or may not be true. Without a physical presence, we create a virtual picture in our minds of the person we're dealing with, so we need to be particularly careful of inferences in digital environments. A few points to ponder. What features of effective feedback work best in an online environment? Is the instant feedback we often get in online environments, by texting or tweeting, a positive motivator? Think of the role that this plays in a gaming environment. Seeing the instant scores of those other players in your virtual world, your motivation can be affected either positively or negatively. And finally, reflect on this statement. Technology has given us access to everything instantly, except to ourselves. The pace of information rapidly bombarding us has caused us to lose the value of silence, solitude, and true reflection. The fact that we're never unwired from the digital world means that we've lost our capacity for stillness and finding a quiet mind, and this can, in fact, demotivate us. Do you agree or disagree? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Here are the synthesis questions for this clip. What are the primary features that motivate you to study online? Can you identify areas of your life where you use external or internal motivators? What types of learning environments do you find motivating? What type of feedback works best for adult learners? And what do the makers of online games, gambling, or e-shopping have in common in terms of motivational theory?